If you're new to Path of Exile, a returning player, or maybe even a veteran who plays every league, it's always a good idea to brush up on your fundamentals. So today, I've put together a list of 10 tips and tricks to be considering when you're going into your next league start. All of these tips are focused on the early game of Path of Exile, ending roughly around when you'll hit red maps. For fun, keep track of how many of these you already knew, and when you finish the video, let me know your score out of 10 down in the comments below. I've tried to order the tips based on when you'll encounter them. Feel free to watch them out of order though, and hop around using the chapters, or rewatch a tip if you feel you need some additional clarification. Before I get into the tips, a quick reminder that I have a Discord where you can talk with other members of the community, discuss Path of Exile or any other games you might play, and maybe even get some build help. Tip number 1. This is a tip that you can use starting in Act 1 that'll last you at least until you kill Kitava. There's a lot of helpful vendor recipes in Path of Exile, and if you want a complete list, I'll put one down in the description below. But for now, I want to focus on one recipe in particular that's critical for smoothing your early game experience. If you vendor 3 copies of the same flask together, you'll get a flask that's 1 tier higher. This works for life, mana, and utility flasks. So if you're going into the Brutus fight and you want that large life flask, get some mediums, vendor them together, and this will help you keep your flasks up to date far more easily than you would otherwise. It won't really help if you don't get the utility flask you want, but hey, nothing's perfect. And if you're just short on 1 flask you need to vendor up, you can purchase flasks from vendors such as Nessa in Act 1 or Clarissa in Act 3. While you're leveling, you should always make sure to keep your flasks up to date. This will make a huge difference in your leveling experience and your survivability. For bonus points, try to get at least 1 anti-bleed flask and at least 1 instant flask. Now, several times I've heard the advice, skip essences while leveling, they take too long. And for most players, this is absolutely terrible advice, because essences are one of your best early game resources. Essences are alchemy orbs, and in most cases, much better. If you want to know more about essences, be sure to check out my video in the card and in the description below. But to summarize, it's a great way to get a specific useful modifier on your items. If you use an Essence of Greed, for example, the item will always have life on it. There's also essences for energy shield, resistances, attributes, spell damage, and flat elemental or flat physical damage. Essences won't really fix all of your gearing problems, but they're one of the best ways to make your leveling experience smoother and make sure you have rares in all of your slots as soon as possible. And since we're going with a leveling theme, tip number 3 is to use a leveling appropriate filter. Don't just load up your endgame filter, stick it on, and assume you're good to go. You can either use a dedicated leveling filter from a content creator, such as Balor Mage, that's the one that I happen to use. He has a great leveling filter, and again, that'll be down in the description. Or you can make your own variant on NeverSync's filters using a website like Filterblade, which will also be in the description below. Making sure that a 3-link or 4-link with the correct colors is nice and bright and easy to notice is going to help you a lot. It would be a shame to struggle on a boss like Dominus, even though you had a 3 or 4-link option that you just didn't notice because it wasn't highlighted, or worse yet, it was hidden on your filter. Tip number 4, whenever you're buying a gem while you're leveling, remember that Lilyroth does have the best selection, but all of her gems are level 1. On the other hand, if you buy the gem from an Act vendor, again like Nessa or Yina or Clarissa, you'll be able to buy a higher level version. If you buy a level 1 gem, in most cases you'll need to level it up a few times before you can use it. And even though a level gem might not be quite on par with the ones you've had since Act 1, it should be good enough, especially if it's not your main skill. So you can save yourself some time, maybe save yourself some Aqueduct or Blood Aqueduct runs, and get back to leveling all the faster. The first thing that you should do after killing Kitava is grab a beer, chat with Kirak, and start unlocking your Atlas. Before you do that though, be sure to type passives into the chat. This will give you a list of all the passive quests in Path of Exile. There's going to be a 1, 2, or 0 next to each quest. 0 means you have not completed the quest, or you have, but you don't have a passive point from it. This could occur with something like Deal with the Bandits. The passive points there are specifically from Aramir's favor. So if you decided to help Alira, a choice that's honestly a great option on your League Start build, that will be a 0 even though you did it. The best way to tell this is just remember which bandit you helped. For everything else though, there should be a 1 or a 2 next to the quest, denoting that you have completed it and you do have a passive. If you missed any and you're already at maps, be sure to go back and get those. You'll need all the extra damage, life, or defenses you can muster. Number 6, when you're trying to link an item, keep in mind that if you want it to be a 5-link or 6-link body armor in particular, the higher the quality of the item, the higher your odds of linking. So before you go to link it, toss some armor or scraps at it. This will save you some precious fuses, especially early on when you don't have too many. Back in the olden days, this used to be even more important because fusings consume the quality on your items. So you'd want to 20% something right after you hit a 4-link to try to 5-link it, or right after you hit that 5-link to try to 6-link something. Thankfully, it's been years since fusings removed quality from items. But it's still important to quality your items before you link them, and it can save you some time and currency, even if you're just trying to 4-link something. While we're on the topic of sockets and linking, remember, the number of sockets an item can roll can be bypassed by the crafting bench, but normally you'll need an item of at least item level 25 to get 4 sockets, and an item of at least item level 50 to get 6. With tainted currencies going away after 3.16, at least as far as we know, you might be a little concerned about your ability to modify colors, sockets, and links on corrupted items. Never fear, this isn't going away. In fact, it's been in the game all along. You can use your crafting bench to socket, link, and recolor a corrupted item. This used to be exclusive to Varichu's crafting bench, but when the exiled masters betrayed us, it got added as a feature to the general one. Doing this will cost you 1 Vol Orb for each other currency item used in the craft. So if you want to recolor a corrupted item to have 1 red socket, that's going to cost you 4 chromatic orbs and 4 Vol Orbs. On the other hand, if you wanted to 6-link a 6-socketed item, that's going to cost you 1,500 orbs of fusing and a whopping 1,500 Vol Orbs. The additional cost means that certain crafting projects might not be economical, such as aiming for a large number of off-colors on a corrupted item, or 6-linking a mediocre corrupted rare. But things like recoloring for 1 or 2 off-colors, or even 4-linking an item's pretty cheap, so don't be deterred from buying an upgrade just because it's corrupted. Tip number 8. Did you know that you can level 10% faster just by subscribing to this channel? Hit the button and shave time off your next league start. Of course, I just made that up on the spot. Like with 93% of the statistics you find on the internet. But if you found these tips helpful, be sure to leave a like on the video, and if you want to see more Path of Exile content, sub to the channel and ring the bell to be notified whenever I upload. But now, let's get back to the actual tip number 8. Zana is incredibly helpful to your early Atlas progression. After she first appears, she'll give you the option to purchase a number of maps. These will cost you a few alchemy orbs, or a few chance orbs, and they're a great way to boost your early Atlas progression, especially if you're trying to complete your yellow and early red maps. The maps Zana offers will refresh every time you start one of her missions through the Atlas device, and the exact selection available will vary based on your Atlas progression. Tip number 9, speaking of Atlas progression, you can also vendor 3 copies of a map to get a map 1 tier higher. This is more focused around SSF, as in trade it's often more economical to just sell your maps and buy what you need, but if you don't have the option to trade with other players, or you don't want to be bothered with trading maps, you can use a vendor to boost your progression. So let's say you vendor 3 tier 5 maps, you'll get a tier 6 map. The maps offered will be based on the connected maps, so if you vendor different copies of the same base map, you'll get different options. Feel free to play around with this a bit in the trade window. As you head into early reds, you're almost done with your early game progression, but don't forget Uber Lab. You no longer need to do 6 different lab trials to unlock the Eternal Labyrinth. All you need is to find or purchase 1 Gift of a Goddess, and you're good to go. Your last 2 Ascendancy points will go a long way to boosting your damage or defenses to where they need to be. This is also a great time to do a once-over on your gear. Make sure that your resists are capped. Make sure you have a decent amount of life, ES, or otherwise effective health. And double-check your flasks. They should all be rolled with a prefix and a suffix, and if you have any instilling orbs, set up some flask triggers. Maybe you're just a god gamer who hits all their flasks perfectly all the time, and this won't do too much for you. But for us mere mortals, you'll want a flask that uses itself when you're full, when you're inflicted with an ailment, or when you get hit really hard. It's going to be far better than a flask that you never hit, and you remembered just after you died. So those are my 10 tips for beginner, returning, or veteran players. For those of you keeping score, how well did you do? Did you learn a lot today, or are these things you already knew? And if you did know everything here, what are some tips that you would have for other players on best practices on a league start or when progressing the Atlas? I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you for watching. And again, a special thanks to my patrons and YouTube channel members. If you want to support me, you can do so by clicking the links down in the description below or on screen right now. You can also support by making purchases through my Nexus page. Or if you just want to chill and hang out, be sure to join the Discord. Again, links for everything are down in the description below. Thank you, and have a great day.